Aaron Rodgers is finally on his way to Pittsburgh, and after months of speculation, waiting, rumors, and non-stop debate, the Steelers now appear ready to move forward with the plan that has quietly been building throughout the entire offseason. What makes this situation so interesting is that inside the organization, this never really felt like a panic move. From the outside, fans saw delays, uncertainty, and frustration. But internally, everything being said by the coaching staff and front office pointed toward one thing. They believed Rodgers was eventually going to arrive. And honestly, when you start connecting all the dots, it becomes easier to understand why the Steelers stayed patient. The biggest clue may have been the hiring of Mike McCarthy. Once that move happened, the feeling around the organization completely shifted. There was already familiarity there, already trust, already a system Rodgers understood, and suddenly this stopped looking like a random veteran signing and started looking like a calculated transition plan for the offense. That's important because the Steelers are clearly trying to avoid going backward offensively after finally showing signs of growth last season. This team did not win games the same old way anymore. The offense began developing young pieces that the franchise believes can become the foundation of the future. The offensive line improved with Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, and Mason McCormick continuing to develop. Jaylen Warren remained an important part of the offense. DK Metcalf gives them another major weapon. The receiver room is deeper. The running game looks more balanced. And now the Steelers believe Rodgers can stabilize everything while those younger players continue growing. That's why the organization never seriously entertained the idea of tanking or throwing away a season just to chase draft position. Art Rooney made it clear that remaining competitive matters to this franchise. Even if some fans wanted the Steelers to hand the keys immediately to a younger quarterback like Will Howard or Drew Aller, the reality is the organization does not believe that would give this roster the best chance to win right now. And whether fans love Rodgers or not, the coaching staff clearly believes he still raises the level of the offense. What's also fascinating is how much respect Rodgers reportedly earned inside the locker room last season. Public perception of him can sometimes become dominated by headlines, interviews, and controversies, but several players inside the building apparently viewed him very differently. According to the discussion surrounding the team, Rodgers became heavily respected for his leadership, experience, and presence around younger players. That matters more than people think, especially when a team is trying to develop future quarterbacks. Because make no mistake, the Steelers are still thinking about the future at quarterback. That's where Drew Aller suddenly becomes one of the most important names to watch moving forward. The pressure surrounding Aller is extremely interesting because it cuts both ways. On one hand, Rodgers arriving removes immediate pressure from him. He does not have to walk into the NFL expected to save the franchise. He can develop quietly, learn behind a Hall of Fame quarterback, and work through mechanical issues without the spotlight crushing him every week. But on the other hand, this also creates urgency for his development. Because if Aller spends this entire season on the bench, while the Steelers remain competitive, there is still a strong possibility the organization drafts another quarterback high next year if they believe a true franchise option is available. That means Aller cannot afford to simply sit comfortably. Every practice rep, every camp session, every meeting, and every preseason opportunity becomes critical for proving he belongs in the long-term conversation. And the Steelers know exactly what needs development. The physical tools are obvious. Aller has size, arm strength, and natural talent that immediately stand out. The issue has always been consistency. His footwork needs refinement. His decision-making needs improvement. Too often in college, he relied entirely on arm strength instead of resetting properly and throwing with balance and timing. Defenders could sometimes read where he wanted to go because he stared receivers down too long. Those are correctable problems, but only if the player fully accepts coaching and commits to fixing them. That's why one detail from inside the organization really stands out. Steelers quarterbacks coach Tom Arth reportedly appreciated the fact that Aller openly acknowledged his weaknesses during meetings. Instead of acting like a superstar prospect who already had everything figured out, he reportedly admitted he needed work on his mechanics and placement. That humility may become one of the biggest reasons the Steelers believe he can improve. And now he enters rookie camp with enormous attention surrounding him. Not because he's expected to start immediately, but because everyone wants to see how he handles the environment. Leadership will matter immediately. Last year, Will Howard reportedly took charge quickly during rookie activities, organizing extra work with teammates after practices and showing showing command early. Now people want to see if Aller approaches things similarly. At the same time, rookie camp is also going to reveal a lot about the Steelers' offensive direction under this new coaching staff. One major storyline involves the offensive line. The Steelers drafted Maxi Hanachor and Jennings Dunker, and there is already heavy discussion about where both players fit best. Dunker especially is fascinating because while he played tackle, there are strong signs the Steelers may eventually move him inside to guard. His physicality, violent hands, and aggressive blocking style fit that role naturally. When he attacks defenders downhill, he looks dominant. The question is whether the Steelers immediately start cross-training him or lock him into one position early. That matters because Mike McCarthy reportedly wants the offensive line structure becoming clearer sooner rather than later. The organization understands constant movement can hurt development, especially for young linemen, so rookie camp may provide the first hints about how serious they are regarding specific positional plans. Jeremy Bernard is another rookie attracting major attention. The Steelers reportedly love his versatility and route running ability. McCarthy discussed wanting receivers capable of lining up both outside and inside, and Bernard appears to fit that mold perfectly. Even in limited rookie camp practices, coaches will likely experiment with how many positions he can handle early. And honestly, that may be the biggest theme of this entire offseason: versatility combined with development. The Steelers are trying to stay competitive while quietly building the next version of their offense underneath the surface. Rodgers may only be the temporary answer, but the organization clearly hopes his presence helps accelerate the growth of everybody else around him before the next true franchise quarterback eventually takes over. Now the question becomes whether this plan can actually work the way Pittsburgh hopes it will. Do Steelers fans believe Aaron Rodgers is the right bridge quarterback for this team while the younger players continue developing, or do you think the franchise should have gone all in on the youth movement immediately? The reality for the Steelers now is that everything changes once rookie camp begins, because all the offseason theories suddenly start turning into evaluations that can directly affect the future of the roster. Up to this point, fans have mostly been debating possibilities. Could Drew Aller eventually become the guy? Can the offensive line finally stabilize? Will Aaron Rodgers actually elevate the offense enough to matter? But once coaches get these players on the field together, even in shorts and limited drills, the organization starts forming real opinions that could shape the entire season. And one of the biggest things to watch is how quickly this new coaching staff establishes its identity. That part is being overlooked right now because so much attention has centered around Rodgers, but the Steelers are entering a completely different offensive environment than what fans have been used to seeing. Mike McCarthy wants structure. He wants clarity. He wants players understanding roles early instead of constantly rotating without purpose. You can already hear it in the way the staff talks about development. They are emphasizing teaching, consistency, and preparation in a way that suggests they know this offense cannot afford another year of confusion. That's why the offensive line battle matters so much. The Steelers are trying to build a young offensive core that can stay together for years, and they clearly believe players like Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, Maxi Hanachor, and Jennings Dunker are central to that vision. The interesting part is that this rookie camp may quietly reveal who the staff trusts to move quickly and who they believe needs more time. Jennings Dunker especially feels like someone who could surprise people early. Everything about his game screams physical Steelers football. He plays violently, attacks defenders aggressively, and seems completely comfortable finishing blocks with authority. Coaches love linemen who bring attitude, and Dunker absolutely plays with that mentality. If he adapts quickly inside at guard, there is a legitimate path for him to become a contributor sooner than many fans expect. Maxi Hanachor may be a different story. The talent is obvious, but he still feels raw compared to some of the other young linemen. The Steelers are going to have to decide whether they want to speed up his transition or allow him to develop more gradually. And because he played right tackle throughout college, there are still important questions about where he fits best long term. Does he stay on the right side? Does Troy Fautanu eventually move? Does Broderick Jones become part of a competition? Those decisions are not finalized yet, and rookie camp could offer the first clues. Meanwhile, Jeremy Bernard might quietly become one of the most exciting rookies on the roster. There's real belief inside the organization that he can become exactly the type of versatile receiver this offense needs. His route running already stands out, and the coaching staff clearly values his ability to line up in multiple spots. What's important here is not just whether Bernard makes plays immediately, but how fast he earns trust. Rodgers historically values receivers who understand spacing, timing, and adjustments. If Bernard shows early intelligence within the offense, that relationship could become very important much faster than expected, and that brings everything back to Rodgers again, because whether fans want to admit it or not, his presence changes the pressure level for everybody around him. Younger players now have a quarterback capable of identifying mistakes immediately. Offensive linemen must process faster. Receivers must run cleaner routes. Quarterbacks like Drew Aller and Will Howard now have one of the smartest football minds in the sport sitting inside their meeting rooms every day. That creates opportunity, but it also creates accountability. For Drew Aller specifically, this next year could define the direction of his entire career. The Steelers did not draft him simply to become another forgotten developmental quarterback sitting on the depth chart. They clearly see traits worth investing in. But the organization also understands traits alone mean nothing in the NFL if the mental side and mechanics never catch up. And honestly, some of Aller's biggest challenges may have nothing to do with arm talent. It's gonna come down to discipline. Can he consistently clean up his footwork? Can he stop relying purely on raw arm strength? Can he learn to process defenses faster instead of locking onto targets? Can he absorb coaching without frustration? Those are the questions that separate quarterbacks who develop from quarterbacks who disappear. The encouraging thing for Pittsburgh is that Aller reportedly seems aware of his flaws. That matters more than fans realize. Coaches can work with players who accept criticism. They can build around quarterbacks willing to rebuild parts of their game. The danger comes when talented players refuse to adjust because they think physical ability alone will save them. Now the Steelers are hoping this environment becomes the perfect situation for him. He does not need to carry the franchise immediately. He does not need to walk into week 1 with unrealistic expectations crushing him. Instead, he gets time. He gets coaching. He gets exposure to Rodgers. He gets to study an experienced quarterback who understands defensive manipulation, timing, protections, and pre-snap adjustments at an elite level. But the clock is still ticking, because if the Steelers remain competitive this season while Aller barely sees the field, the front office could absolutely consider drafting another quarterback early next year if they believe someone special becomes available. That means Aller's development cannot remain theoretical forever. At some point, the organization will need evidence that progress is actually happening, and that's why this upcoming stretch matters more than people think. Rookie camp may look small on the surface, but inside the building, evaluations begin immediately. Coaches start learning who studies, who communicates, who responds to mistakes, who adapts quickly, and who naturally commands respect. Those details often shape depth charts long before preseason games even begin. The Steelers believe they now have a better offensive structure, a stronger supporting cast, and a veteran quarterback capable of stabilizing the team while the future develops behind the scenes. The plan sounds logical. The roster sounds more complete. The vision is becoming easier to understand, but in Pittsburgh, plans only matter if they eventually produce postseason success, and that pressure is not disappearing anytime soon. And that's exactly why this season feels different from the previous few years, because for the first time in a while, the Steelers are not simply trying to survive offensively, they are trying to build something sustainable. That does not mean the roster is perfect, and it certainly does not guarantee championship success immediately, but there is finally a visible long-term structure